Let's give Madrid Legal Hackers a round of applause for doing such an amazing job for us today. My name is Jameson Dempsey. I am one of the global directors of Legal Hackers. I'm also a residential fellow at Codex, which is Stanford University's Center for Legal Informatics. Today I'm going to share a little bit about the Legal Hackers movement. How many of you have been to a Legal Hackers event before? Just raise your hand. Okay? Raise your hand if you have not been to a Legal Hackers event before. Welcome. You are all legal hackers because you're here. And so I'm going to share a little bit about the Legal Hackers ethos, our mission, the sorts of things that we do around the world and around Europe. Oh, it looks like this has gone off. If we could just... and set a little bit of a framework for today. I hope that this is not your last Legal Hackers event. I hope you'll continue to get engaged with the chapters wherever you are. We have Legal Hackers chapter organizers from around Europe and from the States as well. Raise your hand if you're a Legal Hackers chapter organizer. Okay, if you are from Madrid, or if you're from Spain and you're visiting here, this is your first Legal Hackers event, find one of the organizers. Ask them what they're working on. Ask them about their chapter. I think you'll find there are a lot of commonalities, the issues that we deal with across Legal Hackers. And I'll start sharing about that now. So I want to start with presenting a vision for the future of law. Imagine an open legal stack, one that uses open legal data, that powers free and open source legal technology, that enables a global community of lawyers, legal engineers, policymakers, and others to meaningfully advance some of the most critical issues at the intersection of technology and society, things like access to justice, judicial efficiency, and better informed policy outcomes. And the question is, how would we get there? What are the raw materials to create this vision for the future? How might we leverage the tools and the methods of the technology community to get there? So, in my view, the way to get there is by creating an open culture for law. So what is Legal Hackers? Legal Hackers is a global grassroots community that seeks to foster creative problem solving at the intersection of law and technology. By grassroots, that means bottom up. It means each chapter is self-organized. It means it's self-governed. They choose what events they want to host. They host them in their local cities based on the interests of the members of their local community. By fostering, I mean inspiring, bringing people together so they can teach each other, build things together, and discuss some of the most pressing issues at the intersection of technology and society. Creative problem solving, that's hacking. As I'll talk about later, when I say hacking, I don't mean breaking into computer systems. What I mean is creative problem solving, finding new and clever ways to address long-standing issues, whether that uses technology or not. And when I talk about the intersection of law and technology, I mean that broadly. So not just legal technology, not just technology policy, but anywhere where technology and law meet, Legal Hackers is there. And that's what legal hacking is all about. Legal Hackers began 7 years ago in Brooklyn, New York. It was started by a number of students at Brooklyn Law School who were members of a legal clinic, provided free legal services to early-stage technology startups in New York City. And they faced a challenge. In fact, America faced a challenge. There were two laws that had been proposed, SOPA and PIPA, that would have reformed copyright policy in the United States in ways that would have impacted the technology industry, but also everyone who interacted with the internet. And so a lot of individuals in the technology sector rose up, and the students of Brooklyn Law School wanted to respond as well. They wanted to get involved. And so they thought to themselves, how might we do that? And the answer they came upon was a legal hackathon. This was an idea that really hadn't been tested before, using the method of the hackathon in order to develop new policy solutions to long-standing issues in order to help the technology industry, in order to help innovators around the country. So this was the first Legal Hackers event back in 2012. They had an amazing response, and afterward, they said, well, what can we do next? So they formed a meetup, New York Legal Hackers. And the idea was to bring together lawyers, technologists, policymakers, academics, designers, and others to address every issue at the intersection of law and technology, not just intellectual property. So they formed New York Legal Hackers. And within 1 year, there were 500 members of the group. They were regularly hosting events. Technology general counsels from some of the biggest technology companies in New York City were coming and getting engaged in the community. And so I was a part of the early community. I don't consider myself a founder of Legal Hackers, but maybe a founding member. I've been there since the beginning, was a part of the clinic, didn't organize the hackathon, but started to help with the early events, and then had to move to Washington, D.C., where I found a similar environment where you had the legal technology community, technology policy, cybersecurity, artists, designers, universities, but they weren't talking to one another. They were each in their own silos. And so the question was, could we use Legal Hackers here as a way of bridging these different communities? So we started DC Legal Hackers, and we had a similar result. Quickly, people were joining from all various walks of life to join our meetups. We hosted a legal hackathon as well. And then one of our members moved to Los Angeles and said, I see something similar here, and started the third chapter. Well, let's fast forward. Today, Legal Hackers is the largest grassroots legal innovation community in the world, with 150 chapters on 6 continents. This map, before you could see each individual chapter, now it's basically impossible. And we just celebrated our 150th chapter just last week, Pune, India, which have launched. So, yeah.
Congratulations to Pune, India.
Is Kanan Drew here? Is Kanan?
Yes.
Is your idea? Kanan founded Legal Hackers in India, and just in the past few months, we've had 15 chapters that have started to form. She's been a real force throughout India. She's now living in Europe, in The Hague, working with HIL, the Hague Institute for Innovation in Law, hoping to bring some of the spirit that she developed in India to HIL's project. So yeah, so 150 chapters around the world, and much of the activity is happening here in Europe. So here's the activity in the EMEA region, here's the activity in Europe. We used to say España es en fuego, because there were so many Spanish chapters that were forming one after the other. I don't know if grammatically that's correct, but I'm doing my best. It's close, good. But you'll see throughout the room that Legal Hackers has spread throughout Europe. Most of the major cities have Legal Hackers, chapters of various sizes, states of activity. I think our latest European chapter is Brno in the Czech Republic. But it's continuing to grow throughout Europe. But here's the growth. This is what the growth of the Legal Hackers community looks like. It's exponential. We have 150 chapters. We have somewhere around 45,000 members, 25,000 to 45,000 members, and over 450 volunteer organizers throughout the community. And the great thing about Legal Hackers is we're not bound by a commercial interest. We're not bound by some sort of advocacy position, policy position. Instead, we're bound by a common ethos. We're an open culture movement, so just like open source is to software, or Wikimedia is to knowledge, or the Khan Academy and MOOCs are to education, Legal Hackers is to law and policy. We're guided by an ethos that derives from the early hackers movement at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the late 1950s and early 1960s, then spread to the Stanford AI Lab and the Homebrew Computer Club. These were ingenious, creative individuals who came together to build what has become the technology that we use today, from our smartphones to big data in the servers that we use all throughout the world, to the personal computer. Many of the biggest innovations over the last 50 years have come from the hacker ethic, from the hacker community. The hackers are guided by accessibility, access to information, access to technology, by openness, the idea of being open to one another, not setting up artificial guardrails or silos, but by breaking down those silos so that we can all work together, by sharing with one another. If you build something, share it so someone else might make use of it, remix it in their own context, in their own company, in their own culture, and also by play, having fun. With Legal Hackers, we deal with many serious issues at the intersection of law and technology, but it doesn't mean we can't have fun while we do it, coming together in new ways to design new solutions. Very importantly, Legal Hackers is a local-first organization. I mentioned it before. Each chapter is run by individuals from the local community, events in the local community, in the interests of individuals in the local community, and then sharing those things out for the rest of the world so that those innovations can reverberate in chapters all around. That's why we bring the organizers together in person, so they can meet and share some of their experiences and then bring them back to their local communities to continue to innovate through their individual chapters. But how do we preserve this Legal Hackers ethos? Well, it's by having an identity, but also having something of an anti-identity, the things that we're not. Legal Hackers is not a commercial enterprise. It's 100% volunteer. All of our events are free and open to the public, thanks to amazing partners and sponsors and universities who work with us. We're not a trade association, which means we're not a membership-based group where you have to pay dues. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to be a technologist. Anyone who's interested in the intersection of law and technology is welcome to be a part of Legal Hackers, regardless if you're a student, if you're new to this, or if you're a seasoned professional, if you're a senior partner. In fact, we welcome everyone from different perspectives so that we can all share in this community. We're not a political advocacy group, which means we don't take positions on policy issues, means we don't petition the government for certain policy outcomes. Instead, we want to serve as a trusted, neutral forum for discussion of these really important issues. And finally, we're not a computer hacking group. And that means we're not a black hat hacking group doing illegal computer hacking. We're also not a white hat hacking group that hacks in order to tell the company, hey, your systems are broken. We are a creative problem-solving community at the intersection of law and technology. So of course we'll talk about these issues, but we don't support, condone, or engage in computer hacking. We're an open community. We include everyone, so you can see here. It's everyone from lawyers to designers to artists, academics, psychologists, for example. We all have a role to play in Legal Hackers. Our chapters have amazing organizing teams. Once again, talk to the organizers who are organizing their chapters. These are leaders in legal innovation in their local communities. The Madrid chapter has about 2,000 members now? 2,000 members. Think of people who run large organizations, corporations. That's what these individuals are doing in the Legal Hackers chapters. They're organizing, galvanizing, inspiring, and creating the future of law. We also have amazing student groups. We just started this recently. But just as we have chapters for entire cities, we want to bring together students early in their career so that they can teach one another, so that they can build things together, discuss these important policy issues in a flexible and open framework within law schools that are usually 1 or 2 steps behind the innovation curve. We want to give students the opportunity to start now rather than waiting for the universities to catch up. Although I think you'll hear that there's some very innovative universities right now that are taking the lead, so we'll hear about those later today. What does Legal Hackers do? Our activities break down into 3 different categories. Learn, that's education. Hack, that's prototyping, building things together. And discussion, that's policy discussion. Learning, that's free, multilateral education. Lawyers teaching coders for free about open source licensing, how to build a company, how to do fundraising, policy issues. But then the flip side as well, technologists and designers teaching lawyers about how to incorporate design thinking into their processes, how to code, how to use data science in order to be more effective advocates, for example. So this is real multidisciplinary and free and open learning. Hacking, once you get everyone learning together, build things together. And then discussion, what does this all mean? Oftentimes in policy discussions and law discussions, the people who are building the software are left out of the conversation. Legal Hackers wants to change that, make sure that all stakeholders can be involved in the conversation early. Here are some local chapter events. Oh no, some of the things got messed up over here. These are local chapter events from around the world. Here's Coding for Lawyers in Kenya. We have Almaty, Kazakhstan up in the upper left. Sheffield Legal Hackers, where's Matt? Here's Matt from Sheffield Legal Hackers. One of their events in Slovenia, Tokyo, Sydney, Australia, Lahore in Pakistan. All around the world, Legal Hackers are gathering together to work on these things in a free, open, collaborative way. Here's some events in Spain. We went too far. Here's some events in Spain from the CLB Fest, Computational Law and Blockchain Festival, which just had its 2nd year here in Madrid, to events in Bilbao and in Valencia and in Asturias. All over the country, Legal Hackers chapters are coming together in Spain. We have an annual summit every year in New York City. This year it's going to be in September. We have Beth Novak, one of the leading thinkers in open government and open justice, coming together. Last year we had Catherine Marr, the executive director of the Wikimedia Foundation. You can find the video online. It was really inspiring.